Hey everybody, have you considered starting a podcast? We here at Screwball highly recommend Podbean for getting your podcast out to a larger audience. Podbean has given us the opportunity to easily bring you Screwball each and every week on all of your favorite podcast services. Use the link podbean.com/screwball to sign up and save up to 35% annually. You can also use the link podbean.com/pro/screwball to sign up for a business subscription. Happy podcasting. Hey everybody, welcome back to Screwball, a baseball podcast, your home for everything baseball. I'm your host, Mike Lepre, here with my co-host, Frank White.
Hey, how's it going?
We're moving on to episode 101 of Screwball and the final predictions episode divisionally before we move on to our final predictions leading up to the 2022 season. This week, since we kind of are doing fractured episodes because of the CBA negotiations and the changed opening day date, this is going to be an NL Central / NL West episode. We're going to do the last two teams in the NL Central, being the Reds and the Pirates, and we are going to do the entirety of the NL West. So this is more majority of an NL West predictions type look at episode, but we are going to include the Reds and Pirates since we didn't talk about them last week in the, half NL Central episode. So again, kind of weird structure to it, but it's kind of what we had to do on the fly since the CBA lockout kind of happened more abruptly than we thought, and the opening day date changed. So let's start with the NL Central teams. We'll start, we usually just go in alphabetical order. So let's start with the Cincinnati Reds. And kind of as we have been doing this whole series, we're going to just go through the projected opening day lineup and rotation, and then just go into some bullpen and bench pieces, kind of our general thoughts, and then Frank will bring the prospects that they're kind of looking at, and then we'll just go from there. So the first team that we'll talk about is the Reds, and the projected opening day, starting lineup for the Reds is second baseman Jonathan India, outfielder Tyler Naquin, first baseman Joey Votto, catcher Tyler Stevenson, third baseman Mike Moustakas, outfielder Tommy Pham, DH Colin Moran, shortstop Kyle Farmer, and outfielder Nick Senzel. The rotation consists of Tyler Mahle, Hunter Green, Vladimir Gutierrez, Nick Lodolo, and then you have Mike Minor and Louise Castillo, also obviously thrown in the mix. I don't know why they had Louise Castillo out of the projection. Is he hurt at the moment, or is there something going on with him? Because he wasn't even in the... They kind of had him like a bench
He
piece.
might be banged up, but he's also was in a lot of trade talks. So.
Yeah, I pretty much just chalked it up to trade talks, but yeah. So that's your starting lineup and starting rotation for the Reds. They obviously made some additions here, like a Colin Moran and Tommy Pham addition, but they also got rid of Sonny Gray. Nick Castellanos obviously left the team. So the team's hurting. They're not just a total basement dwelling team. They have some pieces here. Joey Votto had a little resurgence. Jesse Winker and Eugenio Suarez were traded, so there's another two big blows.
Wade Miley.
Wade Miley.
Essentially waived.
They basically just got rid of him. So there's a lot of subtractions here. The pitching staff, I think, took the biggest hit. There's almost no namers on here, especially if they do end up going the route of trading Castillo and Tyler Mahle. So the teams, they could have had something to work with, especially if they kept some of those pieces they had, with Jesse Winker, Castellanos, even Suarez, because he has a lot of power. But now the team kind of looks like a skeleton. It doesn't really look like a competitive team to me. They have some depth. They have some relievers. They have some hitters. But it's not going to be anything, in my opinion, to compete in the division with the likes of the Brewers and the Cardinals. So I see this as more of like a middle-of-the-road / fourth, fifth place team. Can't quite call them fifth place because of the other team we're going to talk about.
Okay, yeah.
But, it's kind of a shame because there are some guys on this team I like Joey Votto and Jonathan India. But, the team's just not looking that great.
Yeah, and as a whole, the franchise is a franchise you don't mind rooting for. But yeah, you mentioned they're they got some players. Nick Senzel, if he's healthy. Jonathan India. Naquin wasn't bad. Joey Votto had a resurgent last year. Tyler Stevenson's pretty good. They have a decent couple players there. Pitching wise, they got a couple. They got rid of Amir Garrett for not much in return. Mm-hmm. So the teams, just it seems like they're cutting salary. I'm not sure exactly why, because they already kind of did that once and kind of got some prospects, and kind of that's why they got India and Senzel. And then they were kind of on the verge of being pretty good, but now they're cutting back again. So I'm not really sure what their full strategy is here. But
yeah, me neither.
they got a couple decent pieces. They still got some pieces they can trade away to really kick this rebuild and like do it quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But they also have some young pieces that they're already kind of ready to go. So maybe they're just kind of waiting out, maybe kind of seeing where the Brewers end up falling because they're kind of, we already talked about their prospect system not being that great and stuff. So maybe they're kind of waiting for them to fold and then trying to make a move when they feel like the division's weaker. I'm not really sure. Maybe the CBA this year was just bad for them money-wise. Maybe they're going to get some money in the next couple of years. They go for some free agents. So we'll see. But overall, they're not that great of a team. It's a shame. It's a good franchise. It's a great stadium. Probably my favorite stadium we've been to so far. And the history of the game there is obviously at Cincinnati. Some prospects you're looking at: Hunter Green, pitcher, 22nd ranked prospect. He's expected to be in the majors pretty much right off the rip here this year, if not pretty shortly after opening day. They have another pitcher, Nick Lodolo. He's a 42nd ranked prospect. I believe you mentioned him already as possibly being in the rotation. Again, right off the rip here. And then they have a shortstop prospect, Ellie De La Cruz. He's a 76th ranked prospect. So overall, they have 4 in the top 100. So they have some prospects on the verge of coming up here.
Okay. So
they do have some hope, and they already have some young guys, Indy and Senzel, and even Naquin's, not by Stevenson, of course, catching prospect or young catcher. So they have some pieces there. Mustaka's still around, right? Castillo's still young. Tyler Mahle is very good, consistent. So they have some pieces, but they're not expected to be that good. And they have some trade pieces they can, trade away and really retool his team pretty quickly. So I don't think it's, the dark ages for the Reds. It's just upsetting for a lot of Reds fans and people who like the Reds. It just seems like you're never really in the hunt for a couple of years and then contending for 5 years. It seems like they had like one shot at it, maybe 2 shots at it, and then they're kind of redoing it again. So just aggravating if you're a Reds fan, but not terrible, but just not that great.
No, yeah, I mean you're in the right division if you want to be, if you want to surprise a little bit, because the NL East and the NL West you're not going to fare quite as well. The NL Central is definitely the weaker of the 3 divisions, but even still, the team's just not ready to go, and I just don't know what they're doing or where they're going. So I don't expect much out of the Reds this year. And then the last team in the NL Central, the second team we're going to talk about this episode, is the Pittsburgh Pirates. I mean, let's get into them. So the opening day projected lineup is outfielder Brian Reynolds, DH Daniel Vogelbach, third base Brian Hayes, first base Yoshitomo Tsutsugo, outfielder Anthony Alford, outfielder Ben Gamel, catcher Roberto Perez, second baseman Cole Tucker, and shortstop Kevin Newman. And then for the rotations, they have Jose Quintana, Jonathan Brubaker, Zachary Thompson, Bryce Wilson, and Mitch Keller. I don't think I really need to dive too deep into this team because, in my opinion, there's just not much here. I think the rotation's really not good at all. Unless some of these guys are prospects I'm not picking up on, you'll have kind of the info on that. But, I mean, the lineup's not great. You have obviously Brian Reynolds is great. Brian Hayes is going to be great. But other than that, you've got kind of like guys that would fill roles on other teams. You don't really have like, you know what I mean? You don't really have just like
one of the grossest teams I've ever heard. That's what my problem is here, and it's not a good team.
No, I mean,
there's some names in that team that you might just not hear of again. I'm not saying all these guys are bad or they have no chance, but they have a chance. The only reason they're in the majors at this point is because they're on one of these bad teams.
It's true.
That's just a shame. But that team is bad.
Yeah.
I don't even know many of those names, unfortunately. Jose Quintana, I used to like very well. I still do. Used to be Mr. Consistent with Chicago with the White Sox. Struggled a bit, but he's your ace, and that's not great.
Mm-hmm.
Mitch Keller still has some potential, so hopefully there. Brian Reynolds is great. Won't be there long, I don't think. Brian Hayes, I think he'll be there for the long haul here. So they have a couple of decent pieces, but overall, Brian Reynolds and if they keep him, great. But I think he'll end up getting traded. He's a really, really good player.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, that's not a good team.
Yeah,
there's not much to say. They have a good stadium. They have a good fan base when they're good. So hopefully they get good here soon. And that's what brings me to here. Cole Tucker, too, you mentioned, is a young player, one of their higher prospects in previous years. So hopefully he can kind of do something. But overall, they have some good prospects. Nick Gonzalez, second baseman, the 20th ranked prospect. They have Henry Davis, a catcher, the 24th ranked prospect. They have O'Neal Cruz, the 6'7" shortstop. He is the 26th ranked prospects. Right there, they have 3 in the top 26. They have overall they have 6 prospects in the top 100. This prospect pool is probably one of the best prospect pools in all of baseball. I mean, you have 3 in the top 26, and you have 6 in the top 100. So they have probably one of the best. And if they're not the best prospect pool, they're top 5, I would say for sure, personally, and probably top 3. You have 6 in the top 100.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Puts you in a pretty good spot. Plus, you got guys like Cole Tucker who just came up, Brian Hayes who just came up, and you have Brian Reynolds who's still a younger outfielder. So not that they're prospects, but they just came up.
Right.
So even those guys are almost like, maybe not so much Brian Reynolds, but Brian Hayes and Cole Tucker, they're almost like just off the prospect list.
Yeah, right.
So they have some good prospects coming up. This team's going to be here sooner rather than later, but the problem with them is they don't have a bunch of major league talent right now on the team, and I think their salary for the year is $60 million, and I don't think the ownership really wants to spend more than that, unfortunately, at least this year.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're not willing to spend, and this is going to be not great here, but we'll see what happens. But the Pirates this year, not good, just not going to be good. There's just nothing there. 100 losses for sure, I think.
Yeah.
But prospects are coming. They have some young guys, so I don't think this is going to be a long. I think they're not quite where the Tigers are and teams like that, but they're the second tier, I guess you could say. Like Tigers are now here. Like Pirates are going to be the next team, one of those next teams that you might see as early as even next year or the year after, where they're kind of here.
Yeah, they're ready to leapfrog.
So maybe in the next year or two, next year would be a little bit early, but I think the second year they're going to be here and contending for a wild card spot. But it's just getting there. It's going to be, I don't know, heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Agonizing.
Yeah.
But Pittsburgh's fans, they could deal with it. The Pittsburgh Pirates have not been good for a long time. I understand it for most time. But, I mean, Steelers have been pretty good for quite some time now. Now they're going to be on the verge of not being so good, right? And then Pittsburgh Penguins, I think, even them, they've been really good. And they might be on the verge of not being quite as good. So maybe Pittsburgh's turning a little bit.
Yeah.
The Pirates might be their saving grace here in 2 years.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. I mean, they're awful.
Yeah.
This year, they're not good. Probably a 100-loss team, like you said, and just look towards the future, and that's where your hope is, because you've got a bright future with this team. So, if you're a Pirates fan, definitely turn your attention to that and look forward to brighter days ahead, because I do think that if they spend a little money and mix that with the prospects they got, then you could have a really, really nice team for the future.
Yeah, and you see what those fans did when they were good.
Oh, yeah.
They got Cueto to drop the ball on the mound. Those were just some nuts playoff games and end games.
Yeah, so you bring that back, you'd be in good shape.
In a very nice stadium. We were there.
Yeah, they
can't park anywhere, but the stadium's very nice.
No, I mean, the fan base, especially with that stadium, they deserve a good team, and eventually they will get it. So we'll just look forward to that. So let's move on to the NL West teams. Again, in alphabetical order we'll be going here. So naturally, the first team is the Arizona Diamondbacks, a team that was quite interesting last year.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
So let's get into them real quick. The projected opening day lineup for them is outfielder Dalton Varsho, second baseman / outfielder Ketel Marte, outfielder David Peralta, first baseman Christian Walker, third base Josh Rojas, catcher Carson Kelly, DH Seth Beer, outfielder Pavin Smith, and shortstop Nick Ahmed. For the rotation, you have Madison Bumgarner, Merrill Kelly, Luke Weaver, Zach Davies, and Zach Gallen. This is a team that was like unbelievably bad, especially
historic.
Yeah, especially
after the first month.
Yeah, it was like hard to believe, especially because this team isn't like Pirates level where they're not even a team like the Pirates. Just losing that much is like unheard of.
What were they? 4-42 at one point.
It was.
They lost 25 in a row or something. They were 4-42, I think, at one point.
It was something ridiculous. It was like the month of May.
6-42 it might have been, or 6-44.
Yeah, because it was like the month of May. They pretty much lost most of May.
They had 2 wins in May, I think it was.
Yeah, so I mean, not. This. I don't think that reflects the level this team is. They're not a very good team, and they're probably not going to be very, especially with the way the NL West is. You're not going to be very high.
The division doesn't help them.
Yeah. You locked up Ketel Marte. That's good. You got a great player there as long as he stays healthy. David Peralta's good. Dalton Varsho, you like what you get of him because he's a younger guy. Christian Walker's good. The rotation's actually fairly decent. Madison Bumgarner is hitting his older age, so he's not going to pitch quite like he did back in the day, but rotation's actually fairly good. You picked up Mark Melancon, so you got a closer's trade piece you have down the line maybe. But overall, I think this team and the next team we're going to talk about, the Rockies, are pretty much going to sit near the, closer to the basement, you'd like to think. But, the team's not terrible, but I just don't know where this team's going, where they have been going. They're kind of in between, and they're just not very good, truthfully. I think the rotation is really your only bright spot that you can say, oh, you know what, they could win some games because they're going to pitch good.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
The Diamondbacks, they have a decent team, I think, roster-wise. Ketel Marte is one of the best young players in the game. Switch hitter, could play second, could play outfield. 2 years ago, he almost snuck his way into an MVP. Last year, I think he was batting .350 in the short time he played. He's just been hurt a lot of times. That's a very, very, very good player, Ketel Marte. You watch, if he has a full season this year, he might sneak his way right into the MVP race as on a team that's not so great. Mm-hmm. That's how good he is. Yeah. They just gave him an extension. Great for him. That shows the Diamondbacks are willing to keep some of these young guys, which is great. It's great news. Dave Peralta, Mr. Consistent out there, plays very good for the Diamondbacks. Christian Walker's pretty good. Dalton Varsho can catch a little bit, and he's been playing pretty good. Or at least showed some potential, I should say. So they have Nick Ahmed's been there for some years now. They have a decent, lineup. I think that their lineup is going to be could get hot and cold as a unit. When they're hot, I think they can really put some runs up and win some games. But I think there's just not much consistency yet in it with some of these young guys. Pitching-wise, I think it's their strength. I said that last year. If they could pitch and they could stay healthy, they'll be okay. If they didn't pitch and they didn't stay healthy, so they weren't okay. And Ketel Marte was hurt. That was your whole team. Bumgarner's okay. Zach Allen's got some potential. You brought in Zach Davies, who's pretty good. Luke Weaver is pretty good. So you have some decent players, some decent pitchers. You brought in Mark Melancon, so they'll be okay. I don't see them really competing. Best thing for them maybe is to stay somewhat competitive, maybe float around 80 wins at best. I think it's probably their best. They're probably in majority probably the low 70s in wins.
Yeah, I agree.
But they have some talent. I don't think it's going to be historically bad. I think last year was just weird. But they have some talent. Prospect-wise, they got Alec Thompson, outfielder. He's 18th ranked prospect. Corbin Carroll, the outfielder as well, 19th ranked prospect. And then they have Jordan Lawler. He's a shortstop. He's a 23rd ranked prospect. So they have 3 in the top 23. They have 4 in the top 100. So their prospect system is pretty good.
All right.
They're not bad here. And then they got guys like Ketel Marte, Diego Peralta on the back half, but you still have Nick Ahmed and Dalton Varsho. So you have some guys up as well. So this team's not too far. It's just they're in a tough division, but they're not a bad team. They're just not going to be all that great, but no pushovers.
Yeah, you're not going to expect much out of them, especially with the team that's more likely at the top. It's kind of hard, and it's going to be a little more difficult with a wild card spot with some of the teams, in the NL East, and then you've got another team in this division that could really break out. So it's going to be tough for them, but I see them kind of like you said, kind of like mid-70s win is a realistic, if they play good. I think that's kind of a realistic win spot, mid-70s, low 70s. So we'll see. They're just going to kind of be there in the division, more or less. The next team we have here are the Colorado Rockies. Another weird team, kind of like the Diamondbacks, just don't really know where they're going, what they're doing. So the projected starting lineup for them is DH Charlie Blackmon, outfielder / infielder Chris Bryant, third base, another infielder Ryan McMahon, first base CJ Cron, second base Brendan Rodgers, outfield Randall Grichuk, shortstop Jose Iglesias, outfielder Sam Hilliard, and catcher Elias Diaz. And for the rotation, Herman Marquez, Kyle Freeland, Antonio Senzatella, Austin Gomer, and Chad Kuhl. They have talent. There's some talent here. You have like Charlie Blackmon, Chris Bryant, Ryan McMahon. They just locked up CJ Cron. Top 4 in their lineup is actually fairly formidable. You don't really want to run through that lineup too many times, those first Colorado. 4 guys. Yeah. Brendan Rodgers, if Brendan Rodgers at some point could play like he was supposed to, would be an elite guy in that lineup. Randall Grichuk, they just traded for Raimel Tapia. I didn't like that. Don't really understand. He's going to play good. He'll probably bat like 250, hit some home runs for you. Probably hit a little better now that it is in Colorado.
Tapia's just a better.
Oh yeah, you'd rather have Tapia,
younger player. I don't know. Wasn't a big fan. I actually like Tapia a lot, and that's a steal for the Blue Jays.
Yeah, I don't know
We'll get
quite why they did that, but I mean,
it's the Rockies, and they do things like that.
yeah. And then Jose Iglesias, if he has a year kind of like how he did, I believe last season or a few years ago.
Well, his offense should only get better, and his defense ain't getting no better. So
yeah. So I mean, the lineup's okay. You got weapons, and especially in Colorado, anything can happen. The rotation's okay. Herman Marquez, you like Kyle Freeland.
could be really good.
Antonio Senzatella could be good. They have Alex Colomé now out of the bullpen, so they don't have the bullpen is like almost no depth after that, to be honest. Rotation doesn't have late, 4 or 5 depth, and after that, in case there's injuries. Lineup doesn't have a whole heck of a lot of depth. They don't have really many options off the bench. Garrett Hampson is pretty much it. So
fast, very fast.
Yeah, but other than that, kind of similar to Diamondbacks, kind of sitting at a weird spot. Chris Bryant signing, if they're ready to go, is a good signing, but they're not quite there, so it's a weird signing. I just don't. I like the Rockies and want them to be good, but they're not there, and they're, in my opinion, like I said, they're just kind of sitting like the Diamondbacks, just kind of in the middle / lower tier in this division. So we'll see what comes to them in the future, but I'm not. I don't think they're very, very good. They're just kind of there.
No, the Rockies are not great. They have some pieces. They're in Colorado. They got a couple pitchers, right? A couple position players. They signed Bryant. They just don't make a bunch of sense. They don't really have a lot. You paid $50 million to get rid of Arenado to get some prospects. It's not a bad idea to bring prospects in, but then you spend the money to get Chris Bryant. You didn't want to keep Story. So I get you want to trade him. I think they should have traded Story at some point, got some prospects, even if it was even like one good prospect. It's just something to bring something back for it. Yeah, I mean, I just don't. And I kind of like the Rockies. Stadium's pretty nice. The uniforms, I think they get a bad rep for being in Colorado sometimes, some of the players. But they don't really have anything. They have some decent offensive players. They have a couple players they could trade away. They're question marks. They're bad, in a good division. Bad if you're trying to compete at a team that's not that talented.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what happens. The biggest problem for them is prospect-wise, Zach Veen, outfield number 36 ranked prospect. That's it. They've won in the top 100. And after you trade Arenado to get some, you have one. Some other guys, they have Drew Romo, catcher, and Benny Montgomery, an outfielder. But they have one in the top 100, and he's the 36th ranked one. So it's not even like he's towards the top 5, 10. So I'm not, not really happy with them, or that, they could easily lose 100 games.
Mm-hmm.
But they have some talent, so I guess they're okay there. I just don't see much out of them, and that's kind of a shame. I kind of like them, but it is what it is. I guess we'll see what happens. They just definitely need to make some moves and get that farm system up because they have one.
Yeah, that's not, at least the Diamondbacks are sitting a little better with that. So
yeah, at least they got
you can look at something
and some couple young guys. At least the Rockies, they have a couple young guys and some guys, Bryant, but they don't have no one really come up through the system. At least top 100, people come from anywhere and become real good. But as of right now, they're not looking pretty.
Yeah, that's not great. But, the Rockies always tend to figure something out, especially offensively. They always seem to figure that out. The pitching is always where their big hurdle is. So, I don't know. Maybe looking at, best case third place if they have really like a somewhat of a breakout year. But even that, it's, the depth isn't quite there, I don't think. The next team we'll look at are the LA Dodgers. Quite the team here, as we already kind of know. So the projected starting lineup for the Dodgers is outfielder Mookie Betts, first baseman Freddie Freeman, shortstop Trey Turner, DH Max Muncy, catcher Will Smith, third base Justin Turner, second base Chris Taylor, outfielder Cody Ballinger, and outfielder AJ Pollock.
I thought Chris Taylor went to the Mariners.
Did he? I don't know. I have him here on he's part of the projected lineup. While I read this off, I'll look that up.
Yeah,
but
I thought he went to the Mariners, but we'll find out, right?
Then the rotation: Walker Buehler, Clayton Kershaw, Julio Urias, Andrew Heaney, and Tony Gonsolin. Trevor Bauer obviously is there, but they're still figuring out what's going on with him because I think the leave kept getting extended, and they'll probably put a suspension on him.
They could, but they could retroact it. He's getting no charges against him. I'm in the sign of Trevor Bauer now. He should be able to pitch. He was cleared.
Yeah.
He's missed almost all last year. I mean, it's similar to Marcell Ozuna. He's another one that got cleared. he was retroactive his suspension. I feel like Trevor Bauer should be able to pitch. I'm not sure really what's going on there.
Yeah, I'm not really sure either.
Big fan of the guy, but let's be honest. The guy deserves to pitch now. He was cleared, and he missed three-quarters of a year. I mean, what's the problem?
Yeah, right. I don't.
If the team doesn't want him, then they have to release him. Let's not keep him in limbo. But let's not, I don't want to get too much into that.
No, I agree. I'm not quite sure what the reason is for it. They reserve the right to be able to suspend even if there is no wrongdoing found, in court. So it doesn't make sense to me. But so Chris Taylor, he did get signed back 4-year deal right before the right before the CBA. He was signed back 4 years, $60 million. So he is on the team. Thankfully, they just didn't lie to me. But I mean, hands down, one of the best lineups in baseball. The only hole you really find is Cody Ballinger, and he's a big question mark because he could be good. He was I believe he's a former MVP. What was it, 2-3 years ago at this point? It's hard to find a hole in this lineup, especially if he's hitting good. So the lineup is stellar, probably one of the best in baseball. Rotation, if you have Trevor Bauer in there, one of the best in baseball. Bullpen has a lot of depth to it, a lot of hard throwers. Guys like Bruce Dargard are all throwing 100 and throwing frisbees, 98 miles an hour. Bench depth, not great. You have Gavin Lux, who really hasn't figured it out. You have Austin Barnes as a backup catcher, so not a lot of bench depth. So, if there's injuries, you're in a little bit of a tough spot there. If Cody Ballinger bats like 180 again. And kind of same thing with rotation. You have all of a sudden Clayton Kershaw out sometime, and then you have Trevor Bauer's on leave, and you're really kind of in a rough spot with the rotation. So I think the depth is the biggest problem for the Dodgers, but there's no shortage of star power here. You add Freddie Freeman to your lineup is pretty good. So I think this is one of the best teams you're looking at in baseball, as they usually are. But the big question with the Dodgers is, can they get over the hurdle of getting a ring? That remains to be seen. But they'll more than likely be top 2 in the division. They'll be in a good spot in the playoffs, and we'll see what happens there. There's always some. Once they get to the playoffs, it's a little strange for the Dodgers. So, but there's no denying that they have a great team, and I'm not gonna sit here and sing their praises because we've kind of known this. So, we'll see where they end up in the playoffs. Really, is kind of where they're at.
Yeah, they got a good team. I mean, you can't fault them for spending the money, being willing to spend the money to make a good team. Never really faulted a team for doing its job, competing, spending the money. Have they done it at quite an alarming rate? Sure. It's almost record-breaking. So that's a little bit alarming, but spend the money and be willing to do that is good. If you're willing to do it, which I think every team's definitely not willing. Can every team do it? Sure. Could some teams do it to a more extent, like these guys? Sure. But they put together a good team. Pitching-wise, it's definitely a hole.
Yeah.
Walker Buehler is a young guy. He pitched great. But he has his times, as every pitcher does. Especially a little bit in the playoffs, it seemed like, right? Last year, I think he struggled a bit in the playoffs.
He had some bad starts.
And even a couple of years before that. So, but he's a good pitcher. I like Walker Buehler. I think he's,
I'd say pound for pound, he's probably their best pitcher.
He's
their ace.
Best pitcher.
Yeah.
I don't think it's even really that close because Kershaw's not the same pitcher.
No,
he's always hurt.
Yeah.
He misses 2 months in the middle of the year. Julio Urias, I just he pitches good at times, but he's just can you really? I think even Dodgers fans will say, can you really put a lot of faith in him? Mm-hmm. Sure, they have some faith in him. Don't get me wrong, but can you really sit down and be like, yeah, he's on the mound? Like Walker Buehler's on the mound, I feel pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Urias on the mound, yeah, but you still like, yeah.
Yeah.
Gosselin at the back, bullpen wise, they have some guys who can do things. I just don't, they lost Kenley Jensen. Do they have that guy who's like, there's my closer, this guy's good. Like, Kenley could be good. They have Gratteralls, there's a nut job, he could be good, but do you feel real confident there? No. Defensively, do you feel confident if you're going to have, Justin Turner playing third base? Do you feel real confident in him defensively at third base? Another guy, I love Justin Turner. I think that's the key to the offense, or at least it was. Maybe it's a little different now this year with a couple added. But for the last 5 years, that was the key to the Dodgers was Justin Turner. But defensively, can he play third base? He's not really that great at third base. He's getting older. Is his offense going to hold up? Mookie Betts. You got Will Smith, one of the better catchers no one talks about. Freddie Freeman, first time out of Atlanta. What's going to happen there?
Yeah.
Now at the money, now he's not in Atlanta. He'll get booed in L.A. too.
That's true.
He'll be able to handle that. I think it'll be okay. Max Muncy should be coming back at some point, Cody Ballinger was one of the worst players in baseball last year. It's just hands down. That's how it was.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what's going to happen with them. They are a good team on paper for sure. Their pitching is definitely a weakness. And I think, I'll do it because I'm not a big fan of the Dodgers, but they won't win the World Series. And I don't think they're going to go deep in the playoffs because Dave Roberts said they're going to win the World Series. And Dave Roberts is not a good manager, hands down, flat out. You could put a, bucket of sand and coach that team. What does he got to do? What does he have to do? What does he really have to do with that team?
It's just turnkey.
Yeah. Well, I got to take Freddie Freeman out to put Max Muncy in. Oh, boy. Alert the elders. And then say you're going to win the World Series. You won one World Series in the last 8 years. You had the best team. You paid the most money. You had the best team. You won one World Series. And it was a 60-game season. So I don't really want to hear that you're a good manager and that you could win because you only won once and you had the best team hand down for 8 years. Or 7 years, whatever long. It's been quite some time they've had the best team hands down. Let's calm down there. But they have a very good team. I think that was just stupid to come out and say that you're going to win the World Series. But they definitely have the chance to. I just don't think they will, especially after that. But they definitely can. Very good team. I don't know. It's just
more of an X factor thing.
I don't see. It's hard with these teams. They have all this talent. It just seems like they struggle a little bit, and they pull this guy out, and then he doesn't want to be pulled out because he knows he was good, and now you start getting these back and forth, and then this guy gets hurt, and then all of a sudden it's almost like a dynamic where it's just too much.
Right.
It's hard to believe. But if it's all working, it's working great. But it just seems like that's I don't know. We've seen these teams get put together like this before and not really work out that great. So we'll see.
Like I said, I think that they have a depth problem.
And Chris Taylor's contract, it's a little expensive, I think, for Chris Taylor. He's been good for them, but $60 million.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Trey Turner's one of the best players. He's probably their best player on that team. I don't really see a player better than him. Offensively, defensively, speed, home runs.
Yeah.
Unsung hero. No one talks about Trey Turner, but really, if you look up his stats, he's one of the best players in all of baseball.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
So, I forgot all about him, and that's the best player.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what to tell you. So, it's a great team. Pitching, I think, as a whole.
Yeah.
You mentioned their depth. I think managing, I think could be definitely a problem. And then having that, we're going to win the World Series thing already over your head, not great. So, we'll see what happens. Prospect-wise, they got catcher Diego Cortea. He's a 28th ranked prospect. Bobby Miller, pitcher, 57th ranked prospect. Michael Bush, second base, first base prospect, 67th ranked. They have 5 in the top 100.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
All things considered.
Yeah, so they definitely have some weapons to trade away if they want to add some more pieces. So we'll see what they can do. They definitely have one of the better teams on paper we've ever seen. But, it's holding up, and some of these guys aging.
Yeah.
Like Justin Turner and Kershaw, no Kenley Jensen in the bullpen. Some injuries out in the bullpen, too. Guys coming back, they're kind of relying on. Trey Turner, one of the better players. He does have some small injury concerns. He does seem to miss a couple weeks throughout the year, a month or two. We did with the Nationals.
Mm-hmm.
Mookie Betts even struggled a bit last year. Freddie Freeman leaving Atlanta. That kind of seems to be your... Cody Ballinger was a complete black hole last year. So that there is question marks. Every team has them. So even the team that's stacked like that, looks like an all-star team, has quite some problems.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then you lose, with their pitching not being that great. If let's say, not rooting for it, God forbid, Walker Buehler misses some time. All of a sudden, that pitching that really wasn't that deep is really struggling. We'll see what happens in a division that's, got some strength coming. At least one of the teams, but another team last year showed to be pretty good, and the NL is pretty strong.
Yeah.
So, they'll have some people trying to, take their best swings at them.
Oh, yeah. The Braves and the Mets in the East aren't going to lay down for them in the playoffs. So, yeah.
Cardinals, Brewers. There's some depth.
Yeah.
Even the Marlins. I've seen a lot of reports saying that the Marlins look very good right now, especially with that pitching.
Yeah, and you saw with this division last year, anything could happen.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
So...
yeah, you can.
But, you can't take away how good they are, but it's always a question when you get to the playoffs with them. So...
That's for sure.
We'll see where they go in the real season, when the real season starts in October. So the next team we'll talk about in the NL West is the San Diego Padres. So the projected starting lineup for the Padres is outfielder Trent Grisham, third baseman Manny Machado, second baseman Jake Cronenworth, first baseman Eric Hosmer, DH Luke Voigt, outfielder Will Myers, catcher Austin Nola, outfielder Jurickson Profar, and shortstop Ha-Seong Kim. Obviously, switch him out for Tatis because Tatis just recently went for that surgery. So you just have to note him. He is, on normal circumstances a starting shortstop, but not for opening day. The projected starting rotation is Joe Musgrove, Yu Darvish, Blake Snell, Mike Clevenger, and there was kind of different things I saw on different websites. Chris Paddock, Mackenzie Gore, guys like this. I just wasn't sure exactly who they were going to put, so I just put Chris Paddock. I wasn't sure who was hurt, who they were going to put in, but it might be a fight for that 5th spot. But I think that the Padres had a really rough year last year, especially pitching.
Yes.
I think down the stretch, what was it, after post All-Star break, they had like a 6-something ERA from the starters. It was awful.
Fired Larry Rothschild, and it got worse.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened, but I mean, when you look on paper, it's a great rotation. Joe Musgrove pitched great last year. You don't expect him to be the ace, but very solid 2 or 3 guy. Yu Darvish really should be more or less your ace, and he pitched awful last year after the substance crackdown.
My thing there is somehow, some way, I still don't know if they have that ace on that team.
Yeah,
they have guys who any one of those guys could be an ace.
Mm-hmm.
Even as Chris Paddock,
right?
Mackenzie Gore. These guys aren't even in the rotation. They could be aces.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, ace. But right now, can you sit there and say that's my ace? I don't know. That's Blake Snell. He's got some of the better stuff. He was awful last year.
Mm-hmm.
Yu Darvish, he's got some great stuff. Musgrove has shown it last year that he's got good stuff. The previous years, he's been pretty good. So they got some good pitchers there. Again, they still don't. I don't know if they have that ace.
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of the problem with the rotation is they're all good 2 or 3 guys. Do you have the guy?
Very good 3 guys and pretty damn good 2 guys. I don't know if you have that stopper right now.
Yeah.
But if any one of these guys could step up this year and be that easy, hands down.
Right. So I think the rotation's actually a brighter spot on the team if they're all pitching good.
And I think they have Dillison Lamet still.
Yeah, they do. He was another one that was projected to be that 5th guy. So
that guy's got some electric stuff, but he's never healthy.
That's why I think they didn't have him.
It's a shame because he's a little older than you kind of expect to. I think he's almost 30, right?
Yeah, so
and he's had some electric stuff for years now. That guy's got some electric stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So they've got pieces. There's no doubting the rotation. Bullpen's got depth problems. They don't really have a great bullpen out there. Bench is good. Got Jorge Alfaro and Nomar Mazara on top of having Ha-Seong Kim once Tatis comes back. So you got good bench depth.
And Cronenworth can play anywhere.
Yeah, Cronenworth, you could basically stick him anywhere. I think as far as what they added, I think Luke Voit is more or less kind of it here as far as offense. So offense is still kind of the same.
Good piece for them.
Yeah, I think he fits in well there, especially with the added DH because he's not a great fielder. So you stick Eric Hosmer at first, Voit at DH. You kind of like what you get there.
Also makes Hosmer expendable if needed.
Yeah, that's a good point, especially for mid-season, trade deadline stuff. So offensively, I think they're fine. I don't think that they're like rivaling the Dodgers as far as offense, but we've seen in past years when this team is hot offensively, they're unstoppable.
Yeah, there's a chip on this team's shoulder.
Yeah,
compared to the Dodgers, where it almost seems like almost feel like they should be giving it. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't with the talent they have, right? The Padres, they really fight.
Yeah.
They fight them. Last year they fought themselves. Machado, Tatis issues at the end of the year, and the pitching just exploded.
Mm-hmm.
But now the X factor for that team is they brought in Bob Melvin. That is one of the best managers in all of baseball and one of the best managers we've seen in quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
So you bring him in, that's already you're better.
Yeah, 100%.
And I'm not saying that Nick Green or whatever the guy's name.
I even forget his name.
Adam Green or Andrew Green. Or,
yeah.
I don't even know what his name is because he wasn't that good. Wasn't bad. It wasn't great. It wasn't good.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't bad, but he wasn't. He's no Bob Melvin.
Mm-hmm.
Hands down, that's how it is.
Yeah, agreed.
But if Tatis already hurt with a wrist injury, where the guy has some power, not a great start, crashing his motorcycle and whatnot, not great either.
No.
Defensively, his shortstop not good. He's not even. People think he's one of the best defensive shortstops. He's not.
No.
I don't care what you say. Is he good at shortstop? No. Is he okay at shortstop? No. He's bad. He had like 15 errors there in like a month. He's not good. He's not. You don't take a guy you paid 10 years, 15 years, and put him in the outfield. There's a reason you did that because he's not good at that position.
Right.
Can he be? They fix him and work on him. Sure. Look at Simeon. became one of the better defensive players.
That's true. And
he
he's
was
young
bad,
enough.
at his position too. So you can work with him, but right now he's not good there. He's already hurt. They're pitching. They don't have that ace. They have guys who could be the ace. You already mentioned their bullpen has some weakness. So we'll see what this team. I think this is a team that can win a division.
Yeah.
They can go very far. They have that electric. They have that attitude. And they have a manager that's just one of the best ones. So they have some pieces. And they fight the Dodgers. They actually fight the Dodgers.
Yeah, they don't like each other.
So that's great for them. Machado, consistent out there. They have a good team. I like the Padres. I think they have a good shot. Tatis, I think, is just they really blew some smoke with him, ran to him, and he's an electric player for baseball. But let's back off a step here and make sure that he is as good as advertised all the time, and he's going to be on the field more than once every week.
Yeah, because he's on the field. He's a very fun player to watch, and he's very good. He's high home run guy.
He's one of your better players in baseball when he's on the field.
Oh yeah,
he could easily be your top 25 player, top 20, top 10 player. But there are times when he's not hurt. He can not really be that good.
Yeah, he's
especially
a wild
with
card.
his defensive issues. So in his own head at the end of the year, Machado wasn't wrong at the end of last year. Like, what are you doing? We're playing for a playoff spot, and you're out there, doing stupid stuff, getting thrown out of games and stuff. So Machado's got his own issues in the past, but he really became a leader of that team. Drake Cronenworth, unsung hero for that team, by the way. Luke Voigt's a good pickup. Losing Tommy Pham's going to hurt them, I think, a little bit. But a good team. It's a solid team with some pitching. They can add a bullpen piece. Can they go get Craig Kimbrell? That would be smart for them.
That would be nice.
So could they make a move like that? Prospect-wise, C.J. Abrams, shortstop, the 9th-ranked prospect. Did they call him up, maybe? To fill Tatis's hole there for a while? Does that make somebody expendable for a big-time pitcher to bring him up? That's some questions they have, right?
Yeah.
Robert Hassel III, an outfielder, 37th-ranked prospect. And Luis Camposano, a catcher, a 44th-ranked prospect. So they have 3 in the top 44. They have 4 in the top 100. So they have a decent farm system here yet. A pretty good one. With some young guys on the roster that they could really trade away and make an ace pitcher get, or a strengthened first base, or strengthen the bullpen for sure. They have some pieces they could make that move and solidify their weakness in that team, whatever that weakness might actually show once the season starts. But Bob Melvin's great. I'm telling you, that's an X factor. We talked about Buck Showalter with the Mets. Those are the X factors. The guy calling the shots and hitting the buttons. I know the manager, you say, doesn't do as much. Yeah, but when the team is good, the manager makes the difference. When the team's not that good, the manager, it doesn't.
There's only so much you can do.
Yeah, but when the team's good, he needs to hit those buttons.
Absolutely.
Bob Melvin's great. So we'll see. I mean, he's pushed every right button in Oakland.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like we talked about with Buck Showalter. Is he the guy that puts the team over the edge? Is Bob Melvin the guy to put the Padres over the edge?
Easily.
I think that you like having those guys at the helm. So I think the Padres, kind of like how a lot of people and us predicted last year, Dodgers Padres, whichever way you go, who's winning it is 1 and 2. I think that's still the case here. The Giants just absolutely went nuts.
I understand.
The Giants are still.
You still will not tell me that last year's Giants team was good. I will never look up at that team and go, "That's a good team."
Yeah.
Take their MLB overalls and look at them. They're just not good.
No.
So I'm never gonna stand there and say that. So last year's Giants team was an anomaly.
Yeah, I don't.
Great for them and great for baseball, but God, that you can't. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into them in just a sec here, but that's kind of where I'm seeing the Padres are the top 2 in this division. I mean, more than likely a wild card team. I don't see what happened to them last year happening again. I think there's just too much talent.
Not to that extent.
No, I think there's too much talent.
End of the year, they were one of the worst teams the last 2 months of the season. I don't think they really were even close. They were like 20-40 or something.
Yeah,
like that.
they were not good.
They
and
were
the pitching
almost behind the Rockies in the division last year. I think they were behind them at one point late in the season. It wasn't good.
No, and I don't quite understand it. Just the pitching just really went off the deep end, and I don't see that happening again. These guys are just too good to have that much of aggression.
Yeah, and Bob Melvin, I think, is that important.
Yeah. So, I think they'll be fine. I think they'll make a playoff spot. Whether they win the division or not depends kind of how they decide to stack up against the Dodgers. And last but not least, as we kind of just mentioned, the Giants. Still don't understand what happened last year with them. Not really too much of a different team here. Obviously, Buster Posey retired, so you lose your big catcher. Probably bigger piece of the clubhouse.
Yeah, I think this year's team's better than last year's team, to be honest. I mean, you did lose Buster Posey, but I'm not saying they're going to win 100 games.
Yeah.
I just don't see how that ever happened.
Yeah, so as far as the starting lineup and rotation goes for them on opening day, it's second baseman Tommy LaStella, first baseman Brandon Belt, shortstop Brandon Crawford, third base Evan Longoria, outfielder Lamont Wade, outfielder Mike Yastrzemski, DH Darren Ruff, outfielder Jock Peterson, and catcher Joey Bart. The rotation is Logan Webb, Carlos Rodon, Anthony DeSclafani, Alex Wood, and Alex Cobb / Matthew Boyd is also on the team. I think that's kind of like a fight for the fifth spot type deal. The way I kind of put them last year was that they're about an 81 team. They're pretty much average. Could they do better? Obviously, yes. Could they do worse? Yes. I think that, all the right things happened last year. Buster Posey had an amazing year. Brandon Crawford had an amazing year. Brandon Bell had an amazing year.
Rough out of the rough.
Yeah, I mean the pitching was off the charts, bullpen and all. They won like 105 games, beat the Dodgers to the division, and relegated them to the wild card game. I mean, first of all, as a rivalry, how much of a move is that to not even be a thought? And then you beat them out for the division. It's kind of cool if you're a Giant fan. But my thoughts are still the same as they were in the beginning of last year. I just don't think this team is much better than a third place team in this division. And even that's a bit of a stretch with with the potential for some of these teams. I think they're good. I'm not going to sit here and say that they're a bad team, but I just don't know where you could really point to say, well, in these aspects, they are a more ready team than the Padres, or they're a more ready team than the Dodgers. I just don't quite understand it. And I just still think that they're a relatively average team. They're not bad. They're not going to sit in the basement. But I just don't see another division win in their future. I just don't. It's strange.
Yeah, I mean, I think last year's team and this year's team, I think this year's team might have more talent. But last year's team, after watching the year, you go, well, I could say they didn't have talent. Well, where did it come from? Kevin Gausman, going into last year, was nothing more than a bottom of your rotation throw-around guy, right? And then he became a high-paid pitcher. Buster Posey was nothing more than a bottom-tier catcher. Defensively, sure, and calling games was one of the better ones. Offensively, was not very good. And then all of a sudden, exploded. Brandon Crawford, good year, bad year, good year, bad year. Seems how it goes. Brandon Belt seems to be hurt. When he plays, he's relatively pretty good. Evan Longoria bounced back last year, even. Lamont Wade, came up with big hits all time last year, right? So I think overall this year, you could say, okay, at least last year they showed they could be, some of these guys could be better. Darren Ruff, out of the rough, right? So I think last year was way more question marks. This year, some of these guys are like, okay, they still question marks. You can't just 1 year. It doesn't mean you're good. It's consistency that makes you good. So can they be consistent? Well, they played good last year, so now it's the second year. Can they be consistent? So these guys, if they could be consistent, they could be good. Carlos Rodon, a great ad. DeSclafani's pretty good. Logan Webb's pretty good. Matthew Boyd's already hurt, but he could be pretty good. They have some good pieces. The bullpen's okay. They got some young guys. So I think I would say this team, and Joey Bart is going to be really good. Tommy LaStella, right? He played pretty good. I think he ended up getting hurt last year, right?
I think so, yeah.
That's what happened to him. So I think overall this team has some decent talent. I don't see it unless every button's hit right by Gabe Kapler again, who was a question mark in himself last year. Almost every button's hit right.
Yeah.
Again, it goes perfect. Last year was a perfect year for them. And then you lose Buster Posey in the clubhouse as well. I don't see it. I think 500 is good for them. I could see them as low as in the 70s and in the high 60s wins. But I could also see them in the 80s, in the mid to high 80s, maybe even 90. I could see it if they want to make some moves. I don't. Right now they're not. They're 80, high 70s, 80 team, 81, 82. But I don't know. Yeah. Last year was just an anomaly with them.
Yeah,
it was one of the best, worst teams. They really just weren't that great. Going into the year, they weren't that good. At the end of the year, you go, yeah, these guys are pretty good. Galsman and guys turned it around, but really going into the year, they just didn't have that consistent talent. I don't know where. I don't know how that came about, but good for them. But I don't see them being that great this year. But we'll see.
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know where to go with them.
In a tough division, two monsters at the top, and then two guys at the bottom that aren't that great. These Diamondbacks, I think, could scare you a little bit. Yeah. And you have the Giants to fit in.
Yeah, that's why I kind of see them as the third place team. I think they are better off right now than the Rockies and Diamondbacks, but especially with the year they had last year. If you find some of that this year, you're obviously like what you say. But they're not the Dodgers or the Padres, in my opinion, as far as talent.
Yeah, and you lost Chris Bryant. He was there the second half of the year, and that's
yeah, right. That's
quite a big piece the second half of last year.
Sure. So I don't know where they're the weirdest team in the league, in my opinion, to predict.
And I almost think getting the DH hurts the Giants.
Yeah.
They almost seem to play the DH, the pitcher and batting around him and the pinch hitter. They had so many pinch hits last year, home runs. They played it perfect, they played it better than a lot of teams.
Yeah, that's true.
Teams that really played that card better last year. I think the Braves played that very well. I think the Giants played it great. I think the Cardinals played it pretty well. So I think they always played in their hand having that. Because that's strategic. They really played it. Now that the DH, it's like, do they have that brute guy that can kind of put in DH? But they don't really have that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that might hurt them, actually. One of the teams that might hurt. Just in the strategic kind of hitting the buttons at the right time. Look at the home runs, the pinch hit home runs they had last year, and pinch hit hits, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they did it to a T last year.
Yeah, I agree. I just don't. I don't know, man. We'll see. It's appropriate. This is the last team we're going to talk about for all 30 teams. It's just kind of leaves with a question mark going into the season. They are strange, and it was a strange year last year. Maybe who knows if we'll see kind of similar vibes this year, where teams just come in and out. Teams are bad that you didn't expect to be bad. Teams are good you didn't expect to be good. And
I don't think you'll get quite the hot and cold runs you had on these teams. But then again, you had a little bit short in spring training.
Yeah.
So you might get that still. A little early in the year, you might get some of that. But I don't think you'll quite get that consistent. All year, it's such the hot streaks and such the cold streaks. I don't think you'll quite get that this year. But I could be completely wrong.
Yeah, so, I don't know.
We'll see.
Yeah.
The last thing I got here to add, two things. One, Albert Pujols signs to the Cardinals. Had to mention that. One of the greatest players of all time signs to the Cardinals his last year. To go with Molina last year, and most likely Wainwright's last year. That's awesome story. I think he could really put up a decent year out there for the Cardinals and help them. Just give them a little more thump in that lineup.
Yeah, agreed.
But the last thing here is the trivia question for the week. And it's, which Dodgers player recorded the first hit for the Dodgers? And at the time, it was brand new Dodger Stadium. So who recorded the first hit for the Dodgers in Dodger Stadium? When it was, its inaugural year, which was 1962. Mm-hmm. So April 10th, 1962, Reds versus Dodgers. Duke Snider of the Dodgers, obviously, recorded the first hit for the Dodgers in Dodger Stadium.
Yeah, big all-star.
Yeah, I imagine Vin Scully was there, so he could tell you.
Yeah.
But the Reds beat the Dodgers that game 6-3 in their inaugural game in Dodger Stadium. But Duke Snider recorded the first hit for a Dodgers player in then brand new Dodger Stadium, which is still open, and All-Star Game expected to be there, and some renovations recently, but still open, and they use it currently to this day.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, stadium's 50 years old at this point, right? This would be the 50th anniversary.
60th.
Or 60th, yeah. Sorry, math is not there right now.
You still in high school or what? Huh?
I could have sworn I saw them wearing the 50th patch too. That's why I was like, wait a minute, that can't be right. So 60 years there is pretty good for a stadium. Obviously you have Wrigley and Fenway been open for how long now?
60 years twice.
Yeah. Pretty long standing, but 60 years for a stadium is very good. Dodgers obviously have the money to renovate, and
it's very good now. When you get teams like the Braves getting rid of theirs in 20 years,
I know,
and Texas
yeah.
get rid of theirs in 20 years. Yeah, you go 60 years. Like, Jesus, you could have had one 30 years ago.
Yeah, you could have had 3 of them in that time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good stadium. It makes sense. Duke Snider did it. He was kind of the guy back then in that era.
One of the best Dodgers of all time.
Yeah. So makes sense, and it's kind of like when you look back at that stat, it's kind of cool. It's almost like if you open a new stadium now and Mookie Betts hit it for you or someone like that for the Dodgers, someone big name there. So, yeah, no, good trivia question there, and a good way to end our prediction series leading up to, obviously, our 7th and final prediction.
Full, in-depth, detailed win-loss, winners of the awards, playoff brackets, everything. Prediction next week, which should be a little bit longer episode, and it's always a good time to see what we come up with and what we get wrong.
Yeah. It's always because you think you're so confident you go into the year, and then you have years like the Giants had, and it just totally blows your predictions apart.
So We'll see. It's always a good time. We get some right.
Oh,
We
yeah.
get pretty close in these win-loss record, which is really hard to do. But we get pretty close in them divisions, and some awards we get right, and some league leaders. So we get some things right, which are pretty cool. But we do get some things wrong. You're like, boy, I picked this guy. Then you look, and the guy had like a 70 right. You picked him to win Cy Young. In my case, I picked Blake Snell last year to win NL Cy Young, and I think he ended up with like a 4 or 5 ERA.
Yeah, right.
So it's like, okay, that didn't work.
But when you put it yourself in the perspective of you picking at the time, you can't say that Blake Snell was a bad choice for Cy Young. The guy was pitching lights out. So but yeah, that's the fun of the predictions, is that you come into the season, you feel so confident with it, and then anything happens in the year.
And sometimes we throw a couple bets on it too, just to put some money to where we're actually talking about, and we see how close we get at the end of the year. So hopefully we can get some right and win some money.
Yeah, I hear that. Yeah. But with that, that's kind of all I had for this episode. This wraps up our divisional prediction series. We'll come back, like we said, next week with our final overall predictions, our big episode we do every year. And then from there, that'll lead us right into the 2022 season and lead us right into our regular episodes.
Yeah, I mean, next, this is a big week for us. We have MLB shows coming out at the end of the week, early access at the end of the week. Our fantasy baseball draft is this weekend. Then next week we do a full prediction episode, which is always a good time. It's one of my favorite episodes. We kind of been doing predictions before we even did this.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of did our own predictions, right? So now we get to do them. And that's great. And then opening day.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's a lot here in 2 weeks.
Looking great.
So it's exciting. Exciting time. Very exciting time. March Madness coming to an end.
Yep.
NFL free agency has been just berserk.
Mm-hmm.
See, this is a great time for sports right now.
Yeah.
Baseball is right up there spearheading some of it. Right till opening day, baseball will spearhead. Will be the talk of sports. Okay, what anybody says, it always is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the talk of the summer, especially.
Oh yeah, because really all you got out of the Big Four, that's all you got for the summer is
just
baseball.
The spearhead of sports. When baseball's on, it's talked about. I don't care what anyone says. It's dying. Nonsense. You're just an idiot. It's always growing, and it's the spearhead of sports. It's always at the top. Always gonna get talked about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Always is.
And that's great. We got by the time this goes live, we'll have almost exactly a week, and we'll have baseball games. So that's awesome.
Baseball games. That is fantastic.
Yep, that's awesome. And we didn't lose too much time for the. I don't think we're gonna lose any games for the lockout. So which is
more in a shorter period of time, which is not great for player health all the time, but for a viewer, there's games on all the time.
Yeah, which is great. So
even more than there is already games on all the time.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you got something every day. So
it's even more nuts. So great, more craziness in baseball. Let's get to it.
All right. Well, that's all I got. So unless you got any final notes, let's just wrap this one up. I guess
that's it. Just excited for the next 2 weeks.
Yep. So we'll be back next week, and we'll bring you our final predictions. So thank you guys for listening. You can catch this podcast on Apple Podcasts as well as Google Podcasts and Spotify. You can listen on our regularly updated YouTube channel as well as our website screwball.podbean.com. You can follow me on Twitter at RealMikeLepre. You can follow me on Instagram at Mike Lepre.
And you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at FDubs10.
You can follow our official Screwball Twitter at ScrewballPod. You can follow our official Screwball Facebook at ScrewballPod. No E in Screw. And that's it from us, guys. We'll see you next week.
Yep. Take care.